Well, my name is Jocelyn Hurtado. I am the archivist at the Black Archives History Research Foundation of South Florida. And this is part of our Safer at Home series. We have different series lined up throughout the week where different members of the Black Archives teams talk about different topics related to Black Miami or even just Black history in general. And my series is called Is It True? Tales from the Magic City. And on my segment, I basically talk about different tales or myths or stories heard throughout the years regarding, Black Miami history. Is there any evidence to it? Sometimes some of these histories pass by word of mouth, oral history, or somebody, wrote it down, nothing that formal, but we do a deep dive to see if there's any supporting evidence to support this, or maybe uncover new evidence that tells another story. So today's segment, I'm going to be talking about, is it true that Miami's first doctor was Dr. Rivers? And this is I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I started doing research on Miami's Black medical health community a couple years ago, and this throughout the years you uncover information, stories, pieces to the puzzle. They come in slowly, so it's something that's proactive, that it's ongoing. You're not going to find the holy grail all in one session, but I've been really fortunate enough to add on to the stories throughout the year. And let's get started. So, is it true that Dr. Rivers was Miami's first Black doctor? So this statement, this piece of information actually comes by the way of different newspaper articles that have been reported that Dr. Rivers was the first Black doctor to practice in Miami in 1896. And the story goes that he came to Miami as part of the FEC Railroad line, one of the first newly immigrated that came to the city, and he actually attended to the workers that helped build the FEC Railroad line. And this was actually reported in the early 80s and 90s in the Miami Herald. And this information was actually, reported on by our founder, Dr. Dorothy J. Fields. And I'm going to pull up the first article, and this is all pertaining to the medicine and health collection that we house at the Black Archives. I don't know if a couple years ago any of you had the opportunity to read up on Miami's Black history. There was an exhibit going on in collaboration with Jackson Memorial Health Hospital, and we actually paired up with them to honor, the Black history, the Black medical history of Miami. And a lot of this information is, like I said, is part of the medicine and health collection at the Black Archives. The collection consists of, one box, 0.5 linear feet. And right now I'm going to pull up that article, what basically gives us that first piece of information, that statement. So give me 1 second. Let me just pull it up. Okay. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to flip the camera. Okay. So this article was published by the Miami Herald. It was written in, I believe it was in the 1980s. The dates was cut off in this article, but once I get in the Black Archives, we have the actual article with a date, and it was written by Dorothy J. Fields, and it's part of a segment that she has, a column that she had, Black Miami the Way It Was. What can we tell the children? And in this segment, it talks about the early pioneers. So it says, it is believed that as early as 1896, Dr. Rivers was the first Black medical doctor to practice in Miami. His first name is not known at this time. It is also believed that Dr. Rivers practiced in Miami only a few months, and then he moved to Tampa. JE Butler may have been the next doctor to settle here, as a result of his daily advertisement in the 1904 Miami Metropolis column. And he's also known to own the drugstore, the Magic City Drugstore, the only drugstore in Colortown. So I'm going to flip over. Okay. So this is where we got that first piece of information. Dr. Rivers is said to be the first doctor. And at the Black Archives, we have a lot of documents, and like I said, I've done a lot of research, and there is a document where I did read. I don't have it with me on hand, unfortunately. It's not digitized, but it says that this information actually came from a Dr. Solomon, and he said that he heard that a Dr. Frazier, Dr. Rivers was the first Black doctor. So, like I said, in 2018, the Black Archives paired with Jackson Memorial Hospital to honor it was the 100th anniversary of the hospital, and they wanted to honor the Black medical health history. So actually got to work on this project, on this exhibit, and I started doing research. Okay, so the first piece of information, I just had a last name. So what I did was I looked all through our archives, see if there was any other mention of Dr. Rivers. There wasn't any other mention of Dr. Rivers. So what I did was use online resources. So I started going online, see if I could find any mention of Dr. Rivers, Black doctor, Dr. Rivers in Miami, and that actually led me to the Meharry Medical College archives. And so in the Meharry Medical College archives, I actually found a commencement program that stated the name of some of the doctors. So if for those of you who don't know, Meharry Medical College was one of the most prominent colleges that for Black doctors, med school for Black doctors. And I did an index search of Rivers, just any Rivers throughout the whole archives, and I only came up with one hit, and it matched the time period that I was interested in. So I'm just gonna flip it over. So this is actually, I copied this information on a Word document. It's just easier to read. So if you give me 1 second, I'm gonna flip it over, and so you can see what I found. So what I found was a initial. The last name is Rivers. The first name is JR. That's all I had. The degree was medical. The graduation year was 1905, and this is the citation. All right. So I'm just going to leave it here so you guys can see it for a moment. I see a couple people are joining. I'm talking about, is it true that Miami's first Black doctor was Dr. Rivers? And I'm just going in a little bit of information about what we knew about him, how this information came to be, and to see if it was actually in fact true. So now I'm going to flip over. All right, here we go. So that didn't give me a lot to go on. So now instead of just having a last name Rivers, I had the initials JR. So that led me to look up other articles, and unfortunately at that moment I did not come up with anything, but I was able to track down using the city of Miami official directory and other newspaper, and I actually found a lot of information not on Dr. Rivers but on a Dr. JE Butler. So give me 1 second as I pull in more information on Dr. JE Butler. All right, give me 1 second. Okay, so according to the 1904 city directory, in the back of the city directory, they have a section for the colored residents, and also lists all the names of the residents and all the professionals. And J.A. Butler was the first Black doctor we were able to find evidence on. So he first appeared in the 1904 directory. He was listed as a physician and surgeon. His address was 500 Avenue G. And if you guys remember in our previous segment, I said Avenue G is now known as 2nd Avenue. Back then, the avenues were actually going by letters, and 2nd Avenue was Avenue G. And let me just pull up this page, and give me 1 second. And at the Black Archives, we actually have 2 copies of the 1904 city directory. It's very helpful when trying to locate individuals and also kind of trace back, get vital information, where they live, who was living near there, what were some of the common occupations. So let me just turn this over once again. Okay. And here we go. So the almost second to last person and this directory is named Butler, JE physician, JE Butler, and he was a physician and surgeon. Here you go. And then this led me to wonder, who was Dr. Butler? So I'm going to switch over to the other pages. And Dr. Butler was a well-known physician. Give me 1 second. So many windows. Okay. So he was a well-known physician, and he not only had advertisement on the Miami Herald, but he also advertised the Miami News. And he had a drugstore called the Magic City Drugstore. JE Butler, drugs, patented medicines, toilet articles, sundries, perfumeries, and stationery. Only drugstore in Colortown. So at that time in 1904 and 1905, he was the only doctor, this was the only drugstore in Colortown. So I'm just going to flip it over to me again. Okay. And as far as we knew, as far as I was able to find out, this was the first doctor in Colortown. All the other doctors, Dr. SM Frazier, they actually came at a later time. And while I was doing research for this exhibit, we actually were able to compile a timeline of the other doctors, and I'm going to pull it up. Give me 1 second. So let me just pull it up. So for those of you who just joined, I'm talking about is it true that Dr. JE Butler was the first, Dr. Rivers was the first black doctor in Miami. So, as of right now, the only piece of information that suggests that was something that was reported 80 years after the fact in a 1980s Miami Herald article. And prior to that, we were not able to find his information or information in the city directory or newspaper. But what we were able to find is information on a Dr. JE Butler. So, as of right now, we have him as the first doctor. So, give me 1 second. Let me just pull up this timeline, and this story gets pretty interesting. So let me just show you this. So let me just show you something really quick. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I have so many files. So thank you for joining. So let me just pull it up. Okay, cool. Got it. Give me 1 second. Okay. Don't you just hate technical difficulties? I just pulled up a couple seconds ago and now it does not want to. So give me one moment as I work this out. But I'm basically going to show you a timeline that traces all the black medical physicians, and it gives you a good accurate. Do I have it? Let me see. It gives you a good visual representation of the doctors. So thank you for joining. So in the meantime, okay, so as I work on this, I'm going to tell you, so even though I was at that moment, I was not able to find more information on a Dr. Rivers. After the exhibit debuted, we got a lot of interest, a lot of family members who were related to these early Miami doctors. They came in, they saw the exhibit, and then after that prompted them to donate a lot more materials. One of the materials that I got from one of the family members. It was a booklet, and then within this booklet, I was not able to find it online. I was not able to find it in any other archives. It actually lists all the like doctors, dentists, chiropractors, surgeon in Miami around the early 1900s, and I actually got the first name of J.R. Rivers, and his name was actually John Roberts Rivers. And it talks how he went to Meharry Medical College and how after a couple of years he moved to Tampa. So now I had the name, and that prompted me to go to Ancestry, to see Ancestry.com, to see if I was able to find more information on him. And at this moment, since his name is so common, John Roberts Rivers, I was not able to add on to it, but now we know his full name. His name is John Robert Rivers, and it actually matches up with what I found in Meharry Medical College, which is the initials JR. And we were able to link that up and say, you know, because of his graduation date from Meharry Medical College, which was 1905, which was a year later after Dr. JE Butler had his announcement, advertisement in the Miami News and the Miami Herald announcing his business and as a surgeon in Miami, we know that it's not possible for a Dr. Rivers to be Miami's first black medical doctor. But I just wanted to give you that piece of information. And now I just want to fill you in a couple contents. What was it like to be a black medical doctor in Miami at that time? Well, if you were part of our previous segment, you would know that Miami at the time, its terrain was not what it is now. The roads were all made of dirt. There was no air conditioning. A lot of the area that is now urbanized and now populated, that was back at the day, that was actually rough terrain. There was a lot of palmetto trees. There was a lot of swamp areas. And it was not uncommon for diseases like typhoid, yellow fever, and cholera to spread around. And it was not easy for these early black pioneers doctors to travel, since there was no roads, and at the time not everybody could afford a car. A lot of these doctors transported themselves in the ways of riding a bike. And we actually have give me one second. Let me see. So I actually want to show you this photo, so you can kind of get a better picture of what Miami was like in the early days. And this was actually taken in 1896. It was a tent city along Miami, and this is where a lot of the first black laborers that were working on the FEC line, they had to live in. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull it up and flip it over. So give me 1 second. So this was Miami back in 1896. There was a lot of trees. There was no roads. It was all dirt. These were actual tent cities that the early on workers had to stay in. And so you can imagine it was not a very comfortable place. So let me just flip it around as okay. So right now I'm going to just pull up more photos, and give me 1 second. Okay. So at the time, black residents in Miami, they were not allowed to go to City Hospital. City Hospital was the white hospital in the area, and if they did go, they would have to wait for hours on end, even if they were to get seen, which most likely the case did not. They weren't seen at all. And this prompted a need for doctors, black medical doctors in the community. And, you know, people needed to get treated. People were giving births. And a lot of these, because there was not a lot of doctors, you know, there were other roles, there were other health technicians that played an important part in this community. For example, midwives. Midwifery was a big thing in the communities. When a woman went into labor, they did not go to the hospitals. They actually had their baby at home, and this was called catching babies. And these midwives were vital. A lot of these midwives, they also traveled by bike. They did not charge the patients. You know, when a woman was in labor and needed them, they'd actually help them deliver the baby, and most of them stayed a couple days after the delivery and provided and attended to, not only to the child but also to the mother. And let me just pull up a couple information, more photos. And it wasn't until 1918 where there was a hospital built for the colored residents. And in this colored hospital, let me just pull up this newspaper article. It will later be known as Christian Hospital. Give me 1 second. So many pictures, so many articles. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to flip over. So this is actually a newspaper article that was published in the Miami News, August 2nd, 1959. And it was published after 1918, but it basically talks about the beginning history of Christian Hospital. And because in 1959, Christian Hospital was redeveloped with new amenities, but it was talking about how it first started. And it says, Miami's Negro Community Hospital will get a spanking new 400 bed, so 400,000 50-bed hospital. And it talks about the earlier Christian Hospital will open its door on 4700 Northwest 22nd Avenue, but that was actually not the original address. And it was talking about the modern building was going to have an x-ray, but this was actually a photo taken in 1918. It was a 12-bed wooden hospital. And it was actually, the hospital was founded by a white woman, Miss Clarence Bush. She tried to get her Negro maid into a hospital, which later became Jackson Memorial Hospital, but was turned down for a lack of facilities. And that was a common excuse used to basically push away and drive away the black residents that needed medical attendance. And they would just always cite it was lack of facilities. So she gave, Mrs. Bush gave $5,000 to a group of Negro citizens to help out their own institution. Miami's small Negro community pitched in with $250 that the hospital opened, makeshift as it was with no surgical service. So let me see. And it also has talks about how to survive multiple different hurricanes. And then it says Dr. I.P. Davis, chairman of the hospital, says the old hospital had bed limits, but we reached 35 in emergency. It had no regular staff, residents, or interns, but as many as 80 doctors, both Negro, and it continues on. So give me 1 second as I flip over. Okay. So at the time, imagine, it was not until 1918 that the first black hospital was open for its colored residents. But Miami was founded as a city in 1896. So in the time in between, a lot of these early pioneer doctors, including JE Butler, he had his own drugstore, but it was not uncommon for them to actually treat patients at their own homes. So let me pull up a little bit more information on Dr. JE Butler. Give me 1 second. So, okay, give me 1 second. And the article that I'm pulling up, it just talks about him attending to a patient, and this was reported in the newspaper. So I just want to give you a little bit of insight, a little bit more information. But in the meantime, do any of you guys have a question about Miami's black health and medical community in the early days? So does anybody have any questions or anything? Give me 1 second. All right. So okay, give me 1 second. So, okay, so I'm having technical difficulties with that. But basically, to wrap it up, I want to say Dr. Rivers, he was not the first black doctor that we're able to trace. His graduation year was a little bit later, and we believe that JE Butler is the earliest doctor that has that we can find tangible evidence to support that he was the first black doctor, but we certainly know that between 1896 and 1904, black people needed to get treated. They needed hospital, they needed attendants, people gave birth, people got injured. So we, we're still looking to see if there's any early information who gives us some of the names of these early pioneers. And I also want to mention that it wasn't until 1953 that Jackson Memorial Hospital actually admitted the first black nurse, and it wasn't until 1956. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull up this article that the first black ward opened, admitting women who were giving birth. So let me just pull up this newspaper article. Thank you for being so patient. Give me 1 second. All right, guys, about to pull it up, and I'm also so mad that I couldn't put the timeline of the research that we did, in related to the the history of the black medical health of Miami. Give me 1 second. Let me see. Maybe this works. All right. Give me 1 second. All right, so, yeah. Where is it? Okay, so it looks like I'm not going to be able to pull up these documents. Something's going wrong with the file. It opened up for me later, but it's not look like it's going. So, but I wanted to say it wasn't until the mid-1950s that Jackson Memorial Hospital started allowing black patients in. And up until that time, black doctors had their own shop, had their own doctor's office and facilities in order to attend black patients. And one of them was also Dr. S.H. Johnson, who was a black radiologist in Miami, and he opened up his own office in order to treat patients, since a lot of these patients would wait until hours on end to get attended, and even if they could get attended. And oh, I also found, hopefully this opens up, but I also found this really interesting newspaper article that was published in the Miami News, January 10th, 1926. And I'm going to flip over so you guys can read. So give me 1 second. And it says, Negro doctors get warning. Pair asking police to investigate threatening letters. Dr. J.F. Darrow, Negro physician, Darktown millionaire, and Dr. William Scott, another Negro physician, laid before Miami police yesterday morning, threatening letters they received ordering them out of town. They say that the number of other Negro doctors have been given warnings to get out or you'll be whipped and driven out. Conflicting theories were voiced by police, who advised the Negroes not to take the warnings too seriously. One operators who have employed similar tactics in obtaining valuable property at a bargain, and other pointed suspicion at Bahamian Negroes residing in the Negro Quarter. Significant fact was that only the American Negro physicians received the notes, while the Bahamian professionals were not warned. The post office inspector will be given the letters and asked to join the search for the guilty person. So that was a really interesting piece of information I literally just found. I always look constantly at the newspaper database because there's always an update. Newspaper are constantly digitized, so they're always updating their own system. And this was actually the first time that I've ever saw this specifically, this threat specifically to the Black medical field in Miami in that era. So I thought it was really interesting. And I always want to remind people who are tuning into my segment, if you guys want to do your own research, I really encourage you to do it. Now that a lot of people are working from home or you can access some of these resources online. And if you want more information, if you want to do research, you can also send us an email saying, hey, I'm interested in a name you mentioned. You can do your own research, and then whatever you find, just remember that you can always donate the newly acquired research to the Black Archives, and you can start your own collection. You can add on to this story. And there's lots of names in history, and the more people who do research and pay attention and study this, the more names get recognized and noticed, and more history gets compiled. So with that, I want to say thank you for joining. I'm sorry that I was having technical difficulties with some of these files. I noticed it opens up the first time, and then afterwards when you try, it says the file's corrupt and it's not doing it. So I'm sorry about that, but I hope you guys really enjoyed this segment. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop a comment. And if you have any recommendation of what other segment I should go into, please let me know. And I hope you guys learned something today, and thank you for joining. So as far as we know, we believe that Dr. JE Butler is the first Black doctor that we're able to definitively say that he was here. He's the earliest doctor that we have proof of. But we know between 1896 and 1904, people needed to see doctors. They needed to get treated. So we're constantly looking, keep our eyes open for new information. And if you would like to support us and continue seeing segments like this, please donate to BALT. #BALT through Cash App, and tune in tomorrow for Today in Black History with Alicia Melton. Wednesday it is Jeopardy Noir. Thursday is Profile in Greatness, Legacy, Profile in Greatness. Friday is our virtual field trip, and Saturday is Storytime in Color. And on the 15th of July, we're going to be having a discussion called More Than a Hashtag. Recording the Black Lives Matter movement, and we're going to be talking about how do we preserve the Black Lives Matter movements. Not only that, but different events like the pandemic or protests, different social issue protests in the digital age. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be releasing more information, and make sure to check out our previous segment. And you have a good day. Bye.